Howdy, and welcome to the Petrus Development Show, where we discuss fundraising in the religious sector and how generosity and giving impacts both the organization and the donor. From campus ministries to high schools, from universities and faith-based nonprofits to Catholic parishes, we bring you stories, insights, and best practices that will inspire, educate, and inform you to go out and raise more money for your ministry and the kingdom. God bless, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello and welcome to the Petrus Development Show. My name is Rhen from Petrus Development, and I'm joined today by Mr. Andrew Robison, president and owner of Petrus Development. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, howdy, Rhen. Thank you very much. I am calling in from my office. It's a beautiful day here in College Station. The sun is shining, the wind is blowing, and it's a balmy, 58 degrees. Wow, it is warm today.
Excellent. I am in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It is not warm, but we finally have snow after my first green Christmas in 15 years here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Finally is picking up.
Because you guys normally get a lot of snow, right?
The average is like 250 inches a year.
Man, okay. Yes,
we're
that's a lot of snow.
Yeah, we're off to a slow start, but we're picking up.
I don't know that College Station probably has 250 inches of snow in its like cumulative history.
That's probably true.
It snowed really bad like 2 years ago, 2021, so 3 years ago, and but that was maybe like, I don't know, maybe 3 inches, and that was like a really bad snowstorm for us.
I was supposed to be in College Station that week, and once it started snowing, you're like, don't even try. There's too much snow to get here.
No, we don't know what to do with 3 inches of snow.
Anyway. Oh, yeah, that's great. Anyway, our topic today, we want to talk a little bit about donor acknowledgement, gift acknowledgement, donor stewardship.
Right on.
I want to start with a little story of why this is important, because I feel like this is not a exciting topic necessarily all the time within fundraising. When I had a time that I was on a trip visiting donors and had some downtime middle of the day one day, and we had a donor in the area who had just made a 5-figure gift. We were super excited about it. It was one of the biggest gifts he'd received at that time. And I called this guy up, said, hey, I'm in town, just have some free time. I'd love to just grab lunch with you and just say thank you for your gift. It was great. And he was free, so we went and met him. Had a really nice lunch. And while we were sitting there at lunch, he's like, oh, so what else? What are the next things you're working on? And we told him about a project that we had going on. We had about $10,000 left to finish off the project. And he said, oh, you haven't asked me for money for that project. Like, well, you just made a really big gift, one of the biggest gifts I'd closed at that time. And he's like, well, maybe you should ask me for help with that project. And I said, oh, would you like to make a gift toward this project? And he wrote us a $10,000 check at that lunch.
Wow. There you go.
Right. So just the power of saying thank you and stewarding those donors and maintaining those relationships after they make a gift it's more powerful than you would think, or expect. Yeah. So it's a topic we wanted to touch on a little bit here today.
So I had a similar but not as positive experience or outcome, because I had a similar situation. This is when I was in Ohio. A donor family had just recently made a really generous gift, and so I went and I said thank you, but I did not ask them for a gift for an upcoming project. And then when it came out that we were raising money for that, they called me and got mad at me for not asking for it. So again, very different, because I was doing the stewardship properly, but I wasn't sort of planting the seeds and talking about what we were doing in a way that gave them an opportunity to give. And it's like they always say, your best donor prospects are your existing donors. So doing stewardship properly, and in the course of stewardship, informing and updating your donors and giving them additional opportunities to give without necessarily asking sometimes leads to fruit. And when you don't do it well, it leads to chastisement in my case, which is good. Like I said, happened a long time ago. I still remember it. So it was a lesson learned for me, which is valuable, but it did sting at the time.
Those lessons learned do have a way of just sticking in your memory very bright and clear, right?
100%. Yep.
Excellent. So as we start out today, let's just real quick hit on what is required of us when it comes to thanking a donor for a donation, right?
Okay.
So in the U.S., there's specific requirements for tax receipting gifts. Do you have those off the top of your head?
In fact, I do. So when it comes to acknowledging gifts in the United States, all donors who make a gift of $250 or more must receive a tax receipt. So tax receipts can be email, they can be a letter, but it has to include the name of your organization, the amount of the cash contribution made, and then for non-cash gifts, so if people donate items or property or anything like that, it's good practice, but it's not requirement if it's not $250 in cash or more. Did I get that right?
Yep, that's right. And
yeah, all right.
There we go. In Canada, I've been working with a few different organizations in Canada, and from the best of my understanding, charities can choose whether or not to issue tax receipts in Canada. If they do send one, there's a whole bunch of requirements of what that receipt must include. There's lots of specific fields that have to be on there. If you don't send a tax receipt, that donor can't claim it on their taxes. So that's a decision you have to make, and that's a good practice to let donors know ahead of time if they're not going to be receiving a receipt because they can't use it in their taxes. I would recommend checking with the Canada Revenue Agency to really make sure you got it right, though.
Are you ready to unlock transformational growth for your organization? It's time to grow your mission to new heights and make a lasting impact. Picture this: building meaningful relationships with donor prospects and asking them for gifts that can truly multiply the impact of your mission. That's what Major Gift Fundraising is all about. Major Gifts Fundraising is all about moving from transactional to relational with your organization's donors and supporters. It's time to put aside high-effort, low-return activities like bake sales and car washes. The organizations making the biggest waves are the ones building genuine connections with prospects and asking them for major gifts. But here's the thing: fundraising is both a science and an art. Relating to donors is where the art really comes into play. So many questions come up when you try to find the best approach for each donor. What's the right approach for this prospect? When should I ask for a gift? How much should I ask for? What project should I invite them to support? It can take years to master the art of building these crucial relationships with donors. But here's the good news. Working with a Petrus fundraising coach in our Major Gifts coaching program will shorten that learning curve and maximize your return. Here's what's included: weekly check-ins. Your fundraising coach will be by your side with weekly calls to answer your questions, strategize for donor meetings, and provide feedback on recent interactions. In-person coaching. Your coach will spend valuable time with you in person, whether at your headquarters or in the field. They'll accompany you on donor visits, offering personal feedback and coaching to supercharge your Major Gifts fundraising efforts. Course access. You'll have 24/7 on-demand access to the Petrus Boat and annual manual courses. These resources cover fundraising fundamentals and annual fund growth, giving you a solid foundation to build on. But don't just take our word for it. Listen to what Father Ben Haas, pastor of St. Albert the Great University Parish at Michigan Tech, had to say about Major Gifts coaching. Since beginning Major Gift coaching, we've seen substantial growth in overall giving, total donors, and total number of gifts. We built relationships with a new advisory council, hundreds of alumni, parents, and other supporters through face-to-face meetings. So, if you're listening to this and ready to take your organization to new heights, visit petrusdevelopment.com/majorgifts today. Let's embark on this journey of transformational growth together. That's petrusdevelopment.com/majorgifts.
Great. So that's what's required of us when it comes to acknowledging donations. Donors should be thanked in other ways, though. How many times should a donor be thanked for a donation that they make?
Well, it's not like in the Bible where if somebody wrongs you, you have to forgive them 70 times 70. Is that right? Is that what Jesus says?
7, I think is
70 times 7. Okay. So it's not that much, but I would advise overthinking versus underthinking. So how often do you need to give to thank somebody? You have your standard kind of, this is like what's required, right? The receipt, the acknowledgement. But for gifts that are either first-time gifts it's oftentimes really valuable and very helpful, kind of long-term strategically, if you thank them a couple of extra times. So that can be a phone call, that can be an extra email or an extra letter. But thanking first-time donors is a really good way to kind of show them that you are worthy of additional gifts. People that make gifts that are asked for specifically. So with our major gift prospects, oftentimes it's really helpful and smart to thank them a number of times as well. There's a couple of people, or kind of mantras in the world that you want to, in the fundraising world, that you want to thank your donor 7 times. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's not required, but there's nothing wrong with having in your mind, okay, so this is somebody who made a gift, either first time gift or a major gift or an unexpected gift or a renewal gift or something like that. How can I thank them? Well, if I'm going to thank them 7 times, then I can't just call them up 7 times and say thank you. So it does require you to get a little bit more creative about thanking your donors, which I think is always a good way to really build trust and to make your organization stand out from others.
Sometimes you hear the term acknowledgement matrix or donor matrix thrown out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you explain what that is?
Sure. So it kind of goes to prioritization of time, and then how can you utilize your time and resources most effectively. So a lot of clients that I've worked with, we set up a stewardship matrix or an acknowledgement matrix. And basically what it is it's sort of, you identify rules on the front end that if gifts come in either at this level or this type, so it could be, over a certain dollar amount, or it could be the type, somebody signs up for a monthly gift, or a type could be a first time gift, or a type could be a stock gift. But if gifts come in that sort of meet these criteria for either size or type of gift, then this is the stewardship that we're going to perform in gratitude for that gift. So what that really gets to is the prioritization of your leadership's time. So early on, an executive director or a chaplain or the principal, if you're just starting a fundraising program, for them to make personal calls to every donor is a little bit more reasonable, or letters to every donor, because you might be dealing with just a handful every month. But as your volume grows, then they have to be more discerning about who they're going to call and who they're going to send thank you letters to. And that's where that donor matrix comes in. So it could be that every gift of $1,000 or more is going to get a phone call from our principal, and gifts of $500 or more are going to get a handwritten note from the principal and a call from the development director. And first-time donors are going to get a handwritten note from the development director and a thank you call from a volunteer. So whatever the rules are, it's really about kind of how do you meet that criteria and be strategic and prioritize your time and thanking your donors appropriately.
Excellent. Yeah, one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I started fundraising was to go out and order a box of 500 thank you cards with a ministry's logo on the front, and try to send out all 500 of them in the first year, right? So every time you get a significant gift or any gift, send out a handwritten thank you. Every time you meet somebody face to face, send them a thank you. Just look for lots of ways to thank people, and that was very, very fruitful for me.
Yeah, I mean, my dad used to send thank you cards to everybody for everything, and his boss did the same thing, and it was very meaningful whenever you received one. I mean, it was my dad, and he would send me thank you notes or personal handwritten notes in the mail when I was away at college or living away, and just very meaningful. So,
great. So we've got handwritten thank you cards, phone calls, and that might be from the development director at one level. Mm-hmm. It might be from the executive director at maybe a higher level of donor, or just maybe both of those people are doing some of those acknowledgments for some number of donors every month, no matter what level they give at, right? What are some other kind of creative ways we can thank donors?
Yeah, so donor events can be worthwhile, whether that's getting all of your donors together once a year, that kind of at a certain level, and thanking them collectively, whether that's, inviting your individual donors for special events or tours, or to meet certain people. When I was at the medical school fundraising, we would do a dinner twice a year, and it was really, the donors loved to come to that because we would have medical students there, and they love to meet the medical students and ask them questions about how they're doing and what they're moving into. And these are most of our donors were doctors, and so they it made sense that they would love to see medical students and talk to them and help to offer to find ways to help them. So events can be effective. Overused, they can be too much work, but used effectively, they can work really well. Another thing that we did when I was at St. Mary's at Texas A&M was we had a chapel, and so there were the chapel funding was, I want to say, around $1.5 million, and so there were probably about 12 people who all gave specifically to fund the chapel, and there was a acrylic plaque on the inside that has all their names listed. But we had an artist who went to church, and she had painted something, and I had said, "Well, you're a really good artist. Could you paint the chapel?" And she did. It was a beautiful painting. And what we ended up doing with that painting was we had prints made and framed, and then everybody, all those dozen people that gave to the chapel, they got their own framed picture of this chapel print that the donor had painted, and with a little plaque on the bottom that just said their name and in gratitude for your gifts. So you can go really overboard with gifts like that, but this was a very meaningful gift, and it was a very special gift because, like I said, we had the dozen printed for them and maybe a handful of staff, but it was really kind of an item of a rarity, and it made them feel very special and honored. So I think that those are events, special gifts, just sort of making special outreach or special access. Like I said, our doctors love to meet the students, the medical students. So anytime that you can, get your donors in front of, your students, if you're a school, or your participants, if you're a nonprofit, anything like that always kind of builds that relationship while thanking them at the same time.
One thing I'd add to that is maybe hosting a thankathon, right? So one thing that we did, when I was working in the campus ministry world, is after a certain appeal every year, we would have students call all the donors to that appeal and say thank you. And I would get those donors then call me afterwards saying, "Thank you so much for having a student call me to say thank you.
Yeah.
Why are you thanking me for this?" Right? But it was clearly touching to have somebody who's being served by the ministry say thank you for providing this for us. So that was just a super simple way we could do that.
You know the verse from chapter 14 of the Gospel of Luke that says, "For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it?" If your organization is contemplating a capital campaign to raise money for any type of project, it is essential that you carry out a feasibility study by a neutral third party first. A feasibility study determines the level of interest your donors have in the project, the potential level at which they might provide financial support, and who might serve as volunteer leaders of the effort. The feasibility study process will also help to excite your prospects about the potential of a campaign. If your organization needs to carry out a feasibility study, Petrus can help. To learn more about what's involved, check out petrusdevelopment.com/study. petrusdevelopment.com/study.
Maybe a controversial question. Should we print lists of our donors in, say, a year-end annual report or in your newsletters?
Yeah, I get this question quite a bit. Not as much anymore as I used to, but certainly something that people want to know. So an annual report is kind of a newsletter on steroids, right? It shows all the activity from the past year. It can be a great cultivation tool. It can be a great solicitation tool, in fact. But in there, it's kind of become common, or it was common practice for many, many years, to print all of your donors' names and even kind of giving levels in there in the annual report. And in my view and sort of my experience, there's a lot more harm that can come from that than there is good. So what I mean by that is it's really difficult to get the spelling of every one of your benefactors correct. We want to do that, but it's hard. It's difficult to get all the titles correct. It's difficult, when a couple splits up or somebody gets married or somebody passes away. We do our best to keep up with that, but our database is never going to be 100% accurate. And so printing a list of 500 or 1,000 names in a annual report like that is inevitably going to create some errors that people are going to look for their name and they're going to say, "Oh, they spelled my name right. They don't even know me anymore." And so it can do harm in that way. The other kind of flip side or the other argument for not doing it is that donors really don't care that much if they are supporting 20, 30 organizations, $100 a year, $200 a year. That's not important for them to see their name listed in the annual report. And in fact, in a lot of ways, it kind of makes them even a little bit cringy to see their name there. So there's just not a lot of kind of demand on the donor side for that. Now, what I can say is in annual reports, or if you wanted to list some donors, it is okay to list donors that give a certain type of gift, maybe all your monthly donors, as part of your Living Faith Society, or maybe all of your foundations that give grants. So gifts like that can be recognized as in an annual report, but to list all 500 or 1,000 of your donors, it's just not necessary, and it doesn't help you move anything forward.
Great. I know our time's a little bit limited today, but I want to get one more question in.
Okay.
If somebody's never made a thank you phone call, they are often wonder, what do I even say on that call? Do you have a kind of a script or a way that you approach those calls?
Okay, so what does a thank you call sound like? Well, it starts with a howdy, my name is Andrew Robison. I'm calling from St. Mary's Catholic Center, Texas A&M. Is Mr. or Mrs. Johnson there? Oh, yes, this is Mr. Johnson. Well, howdy, Mr. Johnson. Like I said, my name's Andrew Robison. I'm calling from the Catholic Center at Texas A&M. I just wanted to call and say thank you today. You have been very generous. You've been a generous supporter of the organization, of the mission for a long time. And I just wanted to call and say thank you and let you know that we really do appreciate, on behalf of my boss and on behalf of all of our staff, we are just grateful for your generosity in supporting this mission. Oh, well, thank you very much, Andrew. We do it because X reason. That's really fascinating. Well, what was it that kind of got you started on this road of supporting the mission? And so it's an easy start. So then cut, right? I'm out of character now. So it's an easy start to the call with just saying, yes, we're very grateful. And we want to, I want to thank you on behalf of everybody on the staff. But then inevitably it can turn into a good conversation about what they've got them started giving, what their experience was like when they were here, and then what some of the kind of most valuable pieces of the mission are that really motivate them to give. So I would say start with something kind of basic, like we just really want to thank you on behalf of my boss and everybody else, and then be open to asking questions that sort of lead to longer conversation.
Great. And I'll say some percentage of the time, the response that I would get was, you're welcome. And they wouldn't know what to say, or they're busy, they're distracted. Yeah. And the phrase that I think you taught me, actually, that I found to be just gold is, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Just thank you again. Have a great day. And just kind of can end the call that way if that's the approach. So
perfect. Yep.
Super simple. Great. Well, thank you, Andrew. This was some enlightening talk about donor stewardship and acknowledgement. I just want to let people know we have a promotion for Raise 24, the Catholic Fundraising Conference, going on this week. It's going to be at the end of June in San Antonio, Texas. Have you ever been to the Riverwalk, Andrew?
I have. Yes, sir. It's a lovely place, and it's a great place to have a conference.
And our hotel will be right on the Riverwalk. So if you want to learn more about that, check out petrusdevelopment.com/raise24. There's a 10% off promotion going on this week.
Awesome.
If you have a question that you'd like Andrew to answer on the show, please send it in to podcast@petrusdevelopment.com, and it may be featured on a future episode.
Very cool.
And with that, we'll see you again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Rhen. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great day. If you would like a script for thank you calls, a downloadable PDF that walks you step by step through the anatomy of a thank you call, we have that available for you for free. Just go to petrusdevelopment.com/135, because this is episode 135 of the Petrus Development Show. That's petrusdevelopment.com/135 for your free downloadable PDF of a thank you call script.
I'm so glad that you could join us for this episode of the Petrus Development Show. Do you know anybody whose ministry needs to take their fundraising to the next level? Please pass along this show to them. And if you haven't already, take a minute and do 3 things. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. If you like the show, give us a 5-star rating and leave us a review. And check out our website, petrusdevelopment.com. Your ministry and the kingdom need good people doing great development work. and your donors receive just as much benefit from giving as your organization does from receiving. And as it says in Luke 5, cast your nets out into the deep. Be bold and the Lord will provide. God bless, and we'll see you next time.